Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking into a story that really sent shockwaves far beyond just the campus where it happened.
Yeah, it's a deeply tragic one.
We're doing a deep dive into the murder of Annie Lay. She was this brilliant young doctoral student, really on the verge of an amazing future, and her life was just suddenly extinguished.
And under really disturbing circumstances, inside the walls of Yale University, a place you'd think would be safe.
Absolutely. And this case, it didn't just capture national attention, it also, kind of surprisingly, kicked off some bigger conversations.
That's right. So our mission here is to walk you through the whole thing. We'll trace the events, her disappearance, the intense investigation that followed.
We'll also look at who Annie was, her life, her incredible potential.
And then the legal side, how they caught the killer, the conviction, and importantly, we'll get into those sometimes uncomfortable discussions the case sparked.
Especially around the media, right? How it was covered.
Exactly. Media attention, public perception, all of that.
Okay. And for this deep dive, our main source is a pretty comprehensive Wikipedia article. It lays out the facts of this really complex and, frankly, heartbreaking event.
Yeah, it provides a solid foundation.
So let's get into it. Let's open up the sources.
All right.
To really feel the impact of this, we need to rewind to Tuesday, September 8th, 2009. Annie Marie Lay, she was 24, a pharmacology doctoral student at Yale Med School.
Okay.
And she started her day like usual. Left her apartment, hopped on the Yale Transit shuttle to Sterling Hall of Medicine.
Standard routine for a student there.
Exactly. Then she walked over to a research building, 10 Amistad Street. That's where her lab was.
Right.
Now, here's a detail that becomes really crucial. She left her purse, her cell phone, credit cards, cash.
Yeah.
All back in her office at Sterling Hall.
Suggests she wasn't expecting to be gone long or go far.
Precisely. Just popping into the lab, presumably.
And then things take a turn. The security cameras. They recorded her going into the Amistad Street building just after 10 a.m.,
Okay.
but there was absolutely no footage of her ever leaving.
Wow. So she just vanished inside.
It seemed that way. Entered, but never exited. That's the chilling part.
And someone noticed she was missing later that day.
Yeah, by about 9 p.m. that night, one of her housemates, she had 5, reported her missing. She just never came home.
You can imagine the worry setting in.
Definitely. And because of that footage in, but not out, the police acted fast. They completely closed off the Amistad Street building.
The whole building.
The entire thing. And the search was massive. FBI, New Haven PD, Connecticut State Police, everyone was involved.
They must have been turning that place upside down.
Oh, completely. They even searched the Hartford dump where Yale's garbage gets incinerated, looking for absolutely anything. The scale of the search really showed how seriously they took it right away.
And then comes the most heartbreaking part of the timeline. Sunday, September 13th.
Yeah, that date is just gut-wrenching.
It was supposed to be her wedding day.
The day she was planning to marry her fiancé. And that's the day they found her body.
Just awful timing. Where did they find her?
Inside the Amistad Street building. Tucked away inside a cable chase, basically. A space for wiring within a wall in a basement lab.
In the basement. And hadn't they found something else earlier?
Yes, that's right. Bloody clothes had actually been discovered before that, hidden above a ceiling tile. Same building.
This building.
Yeah.
You mentioned it was secure, right?
Extremely secure. Something like 75 security cameras monitoring the place. Plus, you needed Yale ID cards to get in the main entrance and into specific rooms and labs.
So not just anyone could wander into that basement lab.
Absolutely not. That high level of security immediately told the investigators something important.
That it was likely an inside job.
Exactly. Yale officials and the police quickly figured it would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible, for an outsider to get down to that specific basement lab where she was found.
So the security system, meant to keep people safe,
ended up pointing the investigation inward. Towards Yale employees, students, people with legitimate access. It drastically narrowed the possibilities.
and the cause of death was later confirmed.
Yes, the Connecticut medical examiner determined it was traumatic asphyxia due to neck compression. Essentially, she was strangled.
Such a violent end. Before we go further into the investigation, let's talk about Annie herself. Who was this young woman?
Okay. Well, Annie Lee was born July 3rd, 1985, San Jose, California. Grew up mostly in Placerville, Vietnamese-American family.
And academically, she was something special, wasn't she?
Oh, incredibly so. She
Yeah.
was the valedictorian at her high school, Union Mine High School in El Dorado.
I read she was voted most likely to be the next Einstein by her classmates.
Yeah. Can you imagine? That says so much about her intellect and how others saw her potential. It wasn't just about grades. People saw a real spark there.
And she backed it up. She got a huge amount in scholarships, right?
Around $160,000, yeah.
Well,
Went to the University of Rochester, majored in cell and developmental biology with a minor in medical anthropology. Really sharp focus.
then Yale for her PhD.
Right, accepted into the pharmacology program in 2007. Her research was pretty cutting edge, looking at treatments for diabetes and certain cancers. Work that could genuinely help people.
And she had a personal life blossoming, too. She was engaged.
Since July 2008 to Jonathan Wadowski, he was a grad student at Columbia. And as we mentioned, their wedding was planned for that exact Sunday, September 13th, 2009, in New York.
Just devastating.
Ugh.
The cusp of everything.
Yeah, brilliant career ahead getting married.
There's another detail here that just feels, I don't know, incredibly eerie in retrospect.
What's that?
She had actually read an article for a Yale magazine, B Magazine. It was published just months before, in February 2009.
Okay.
The title was Crime and Safety in New Haven.
Wow, no kidding. That's chilling. Writing about safety in the very city where, wow.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about how fragile our sense of security can be.
Absolutely. And the reaction after her body was found? The mourning was widespread.
Memorials on both coasts, I saw. California and New York.
Yes, and her funeral was actually broadcast live online. A lot of people felt connected to the story, wanted to pay respects. The Yale community itself was, understandably, just reeling.
There was that quote from Professor John Lewis Gaddis.
Right. He reportedly said September 14th, the day after she was found, was the saddest day to open class since the day after 9/11.
That really puts the level of shock and grief on campus into perspective. It wasn't just another crime, it felt like a violation of something fundamental.
A shattering of that sense of security within the institution.
Okay, so the investigation is zeroing in on people inside Yale, people with access to that building.
Correct. That focus paid off relatively quickly.
So the arrest.
On September 17th, just 4 days after Annie's body was discovered, police arrested Raymond J. Clark III,
And it was.
24 years old, a laboratory technician, and crucially, he worked in 10 Amistad Street, the same building as Annie.
So he had legitimate access to the areas involved.
Precisely. Now, the day before his arrest, September 16th, police had brought him in. They had a warrant to get his DNA. He gave the sample, and they actually let him go initially.
Really?
Yeah. But then the next day, presumably once DNA results or other evidence came back pointing strongly towards him, they arrested him and charged him with murder.
Wow, that's a fast sequence of events. DNA must have been key.
It seems very likely forensic evidence in a secure location like that would be paramount.
Clark was then held on significant bail, right?
Yes, $3 million bail. Maximum security prison. He had his first court appearance in October 2009, didn't enter a plea then. Later, in January 2010, he pleaded not guilty.
But that changed.
It did. In March 2011, things took a turn. Clark changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Annie Lay.
In exchange for a specific sentence.
Yes, in exchange for a 44-year prison term. Now, there was also another charge, attempted sexual assault.
Okay, how did he plead to that?
For that charge, he entered an Alford plea.
Right, I've heard of that. Explain that for our listeners.
Sure. An Alford plea is a bit different. The defendant doesn't actually admit they committed the crime. They don't say, I didn't, but they do concede that the prosecution probably has enough evidence to convict them if it went to trial. So they maintain their innocence technically, but accept the punishment to avoid a trial and potentially a harsher sentence.
Got it. So guilty plea for murder, Alford plea for attempted sexual assault.
Exactly. He was formally sentenced to that 44 years on June 3rd, 2011, and apparently at the sentencing, he did take responsibility and expressed remorse.
And where is he now?
He's serving that sentence at Cheshire Correctional Institution in Connecticut. His original release date was scheduled way out, September 16th, 2053.
But there's a change to that.
Yes, this is interesting. There was a law passed in Connecticut in 2023. It expanded parole eligibility for what they term youthful offenders, basically, related to the age when the crime was committed.
And Clark falls under that.
It seems so. Under this new law, he'll become eligible for parole much sooner, after serving 60% of his 44-year sentence.
So 60% of 44 years is, what, about 26 and a half years?
Roughly, yeah, 26.4 years, which means he could potentially be eligible for release significantly earlier than 2053.
That's a major change. Probably sparks some debate.
Oh, absolutely. Laws like that often do, reopening discussions about justice, punishment, and rehabilitation.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. We talked about the crime, the victim, the perpetrator. But this case also became known for something else. The media attention.
Yes. Described as frenetic. That's the word that keeps coming up in the source.
Frenetic. Like overwhelmingly intense.
To the point where apparently a news producer actually got trampled in a rush during a press briefing. It gives you a sense of the scrum.
Just a media frenzy.
Exactly. And this intense focus, it led some people, commentators and others, to raise questions.
Questions like,
Was the amount of attention given to Annie Liz murder disproportionate compared to other murder cases?
That's an uncomfortable question.
It is. It's not about minimizing her tragedy at all, but about examining why certain stories explode in the public consciousness while others, sadly, don't get nearly the same coverage.
There was that quote from Jack Schaefer at Slate.
Yes. The rough rule of thumb. He basically said, somewhat cynically perhaps, that 3 murders at a Midwestern college equal 1 murder at Harvard or Yale.
Oof. Stark. But it captures a perception, doesn't it?
It really does. It points to this idea that the perceived prestige of the location or the victim's affiliation can dramatically amplify media interest.
And Marion Gale Brown, the columnist for the Connecticut Post, she talked about a pecking order.
Right. She argued that this case got such massive attention partly because Annie was an Ivy Leaguer, someone seen as having sky's the limit potential.
And she also mentioned her appearance.
Yeah, described as vivacious and attractive, too. Brown suggested all these factors combined: the Ivy League connection, the perceived potential, the attractiveness placed her higher on this media pecking order.
So when you, our listener, think about this case, it's not just about the crime itself, is it?
Not at all. It becomes a kind of mirror. It reflects back at us how society and the media that reflects and shapes society assigns value and attention.
Factors like status, where someone went to school, even what they looked like. These things seem to unconsciously influence how much attention a tragedy receives.
Yeah, it reveals some uncomfortable truths about our collective responses, our societal biases, even in how we grieve or pay attention to loss.
Okay, so wrapping this up, our deep dive into Annie Liz's case, it's taken us from this incredibly bright student's dreams
to a really chilling crime scene right inside a place that should have been safe, an elite university.
We followed the meticulous investigation, the use of security footage, DNA,
leading to the arrest and the guilty plea of Raymond Clark. And we touched on how even the concept of justice evolves with changes in parole eligibility.
But maybe just as importantly, this forces us to think critically about the news we consume.
Definitely. Why do some stories dominate? What does that say about the pecking order of tragedy in the public eye? Who gets mourned most visibly and why?
It pushes us to consider those wider implications.
Yeah.
So for you, our listener, here's a final thought to chew on. Think back to that article Annie Lay herself wrote, Crime and Safety in New Haven.
Yeah, that detail still gives me chills.
Published just months before she was killed in what should have been one of the most secure buildings in that city. What does that irony tell us?
Does it just highlight the unpredictability of violence? Or something more?
Maybe it forces us to question our assumptions. Our assumptions about safety in familiar places, secure environments. How much control do we really have?
And how do these unexpected tragedies force us, both individually and, as a society, to confront our own vulnerability, our ideas about security, maybe even about fate?
Something to really mull over. A tough question stemming from a very tough story. We'll leave you with that until our next deep dive.